Whether anybody will ever come out and do a prosecution, I can't promise anything, I have no idea. But I do not rule it out. And one reason I don't rule it out is this. Today, I think it was today, Wexler, I just got an email about it. Wexler was questioning Robert Mueller. Have some of you heard about this?
Yeah.
And Robert Mueller, of course, is the FBI director, and I believe that Robert Mueller is very troubled by all of this. But he hasn't quite come forward and done the right thing. But without reading you the whole thing, I can give you a sense of just how ominous this situation is and how much potential there is for stuff to come out that's going to be unavoidable. And it doesn't, and believe me, to me it matters very much who the next president is, but for purposes of whether information comes out, there are going to be people coming out regardless of who the new president is. Because there are many people left in the Department of Justice who hate what's going on. A lot of them have left, but there are many who hate it. And so this is Wexler talking to Robert Mueller. My question, Mr. Director, I congratulate you for pulling the FBI agents back, and he's talking about from the torture, but why did you not take substantial steps to stop the interrogation techniques that your own FBI agents were telling you were illegal? Why did you not initiate criminal investigations when your agents told you the CIA and the Department of Defense were engaging in illegal interrogation techniques? And rather than simply pulling your agents out, shouldn't you have directed them to prevent any illegal interrogations from taking place? Robert Mueller. I can go so far, sir, as to tell you that we have a protocol in the FBI. It's not to use coercion in any of our investigations, and we have abided by our protocol. Wexler, I appreciate that. What's the protocol say when the FBI knows the CIA is engaging, or the Department of Defense is engaging in an illegal technique? What does the protocol say in that circumstance? We would bring it up to appropriate authorities and determine whether the techniques were legal or illegal. Wexler, did you bring it up to appropriate authorities? All I can tell you is we followed our own protocols. That went on and on and on. Now you know that Robert Mueller is sitting there thinking, oh my God, what am I going to do here? And so I think that there is potential for something to happen with regard to the torture, but I don't think we should wait for a new president. And I think that the most critical thing that we can all do, and I know I'm speaking to the choir here, is to continue to do exactly what you're doing. Keep saying what you think is right. It doesn't matter, well, let me put it this way. It should not stop any of us from saying what we think is right, just because the Congress people don't want us to be making waves. That is absolutely not our role as people, as citizens. Our role is to continue to stand up and say what's right. And people ask, you know, what do I do? And one thing that I think about a lot is the fact that we are in this most urgent of situations. And it's so easy to get discouraged because you try to do things, and many of you have been trying to do things for many, many years. And so you have this most urgent situation, you keep doing things and nothing is happening, and you think, oh, what is the point? Well, I have several things to say about that. One is that oftentimes you don't know what the effect is of what you're doing. And just to give you a really short example of that, I have a friend who's been a lifelong Republican. I don't know how it is that we've been friends, really. But,
I know the feeling.
but she's a very good friend. And the other day she said to me, well, it was a while ago now because it was around the time of the Massachusetts primary. She said, well, I'm voting in the Democratic primary now. And I said, really? And she said, yeah. And I said, well, how did that happen? And she said, well, you convinced me. And I said, Linda, we have been friends since we were 9. And I have been talking to you about this, and that was when Kennedy was running. I said, I've been talking to you about this for 47 years. And she said, I know, it just took a while. So anyway, that's the really long term, and I don't know if that's encouraging or discouraging. But so that's one thing. So what I like to tell people, and this is as much for all of you as it is for you to tell other people as well. David listed a whole bunch of things, and the people I like to think about in regard to this are 2 women. One is Molly Ivins, and as many of you know, what she said was, if you're opposed to this war, if you're opposed to this administration, do something every day. Do something every day. It keeps you going. It reminds you of what you have to do. And as I just mentioned earlier, you don't know what the effect of it's going to be. I believe that very firmly. And the least of what you're doing when you do that leads me to the second person, who is Louisa May Alcott. And I'm sure you know who she is. And she was, of course, an activist in many regards as to abolition and also women's suffrage. And thinking about the point that has to do with the long-term nature of things, in about 1880, she was writing about women's suffrage. And this is what she said: if I can do no more, let my name stand among those who are willing to bear ridicule and criticism for the truth's sake. And in so doing, be able to join in some small way in whatever victories are earned. And I believe that each time each one of you gets one more person to stand up with you, that's a victory.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So it seemed like we impeached Bill Clinton within a very rapid amount of time. Is that not true?
2 months.
We brought up impeachment. I don't understand why people think that that was immoral, but what Bush is doing is not immoral, and it's been 7 years and we still have not impeached him. I don't understand it.
There's nothing to understand. It's not true. It's absolutely false. The public was overwhelmingly against the Clinton impeachment. Never got out of low 30s at the highest, was usually in the 20s after months of saturation coverage and the newspaper editorial boards demanding it. There was never public support before, during, or after Clinton's impeachment for impeaching him. So that half of it is absolutely false. The other half about the public not wanting impeachment now is equally false. The few polls that have been done, at one and the same moment, we've had a major polling company say a majority wants these people impeached, and another major polling company say, we won't touch that topic, not even for money, because it's not in the news and it's not in Congress. It is a bizarre situation for a democracy to be in, because people don't know that they're a majority. You have a majority of Americans all thinking they're a little fringe group, because they don't know that they're, and this is true across the board on every issue.
So,
Single,
And also, as to that, I think, oh, you're not done yet.
Go ahead.
You're still talking?
I can talk forever, go ahead.
Oh. The thing about the Clinton impeachment is that it's ended up in the worst of all possible worlds, because it was not an appropriate use of the impeachment process. The lying about something of a personal nature, I can tell you as a prosecutor, that would never have been prosecuted. So it wasn't a crime that would have been considered serious. It's serious, but it's something that would not have been prosecuted under the guidelines. But more important, as far as a high crime or misdemeanor, it had nothing to do with the running of the country.
Right.
So it was an inappropriate use of the impeachment process. And what I think the Democratic leadership has done is that it's led them to think, oh, we don't want to talk about impeachment because we don't want to bring up that thing again. We don't want it. And that has a lot to do with the plan.
Yeah, but look, the President Obama, should there be one, will not last 6
Or
months
Clinton.
without a major
What
movement
about
to impeach
Hillary?
him.
It's just Obama talk all the
Well,
time.
because she's lost, I'm sorry. You know, there's
I
this
disagree, but
media
moving
created
on.
delusion that
Moving
she's
on.
still on life support, but she isn't, I'm sorry. So,
Oh, okay, well, let's,
that's not, you know.
That's another town hall.
Elect-
I have a
Alma?
Why is this just fictional? Why can't we actually file a case against George Bush at all?
well, in terms of an indictment, a criminal indictment, the only agencies that can do that in the federal government would be the Attorney General's office, and I just don't see Michael Mukasey bringing an indictment of the president.
Nobody else can do
There
it?
are citizen lawsuits that are being brought about very many other topics, or many of the aspects of the conduct of the president and the vice president. And in fact, Linda and I were talking about this before in terms of what people can contribute to. And there's the Center for Constitutional Rights, there's a group called Human Rights First, there's Amnesty International, there's the ACLU, all of whom are bringing lawsuits that relate to various aspects of the conduct of the administration, and I would strongly urge you to support those.
But there's, as a non-lawyer who may be wrong, I would also point out that some future federal prosecutor could bring a
Right.
case, and someone in another country could bring
Oh,
a
absolutely.
case.
And it is doing so in Germany.
Right,
Well, on
regarding,
Rumsfeld.
yeah.
What would happen to those cases when they get out of office? Those ones have already started.
Oh, they would still continue.
I'm trying to
Okay.
follow.
That was just a.
Go ahead.
Okay, I'm sorry, I have to leave, I have a daughter to pick up, but before I go, I want to revisit something you mentioned, David, and it's a piece of practical advice for us and a question to you. You mentioned that whoever the candidate is, and your idea is it's going to be Obama, so we'll say Obama, but you said we should try to contact his campaign with some of these ideas. And I'm wondering how difficult it is for your organization to get the ear of one of his policy wonks and have them read that speech. And I can't imagine it being articulated any better than it was tonight. And is there some way that someone from your group could sit down with him and have a persuasive conversation?
Maybe, him in particular, he's a pretty busy guy at the
Well, I
moment.
understand that, but.
Robert Wexler, who we just heard grilling the FBI director, is the Florida chairman of the Obama campaign. Robert Wexler can get to Obama. There are plenty of people we know who can get to Obama, and we are certainly trying, and
To
we've
get
been
to
pushing,
them.
and we will
With
keep
this
pushing.
speech, because this laid it out so beautifully. And the arguments were very persuasive on any number of grounds.
Thank you. I don't think it measures up to, for example, John Conyers' book. And I think everyone should give Obama a copy of that. But take my speech, take any article you want, and phone and fax and email his campaign nonstop. And when he comes to your part of the country, show up with posters and banners and get on camera and disrupt. And if you are so inclined, Don't have to necessarily do it when it comes down to it, but at least threaten now to stay home, to vote for Ralph Nader, to vote for Cynthia McKinney. Apply the pressure you want to apply to get him to take the positions he needs to take to win with a sufficient margin to hold that victory.
Thank you.
Lynn? I could feel you.
People in, the Vietnam War stopped because of people in the streets. You said that there are a lot of people who think that there's not a majority that want impeachment. What do you, how can we get people in the streets all the time for a while to fight for impeachment, to yell for impeachment, and the Congress can't ignore that? How can we do that?
Well, we have a
Do you
pretty...
think it would be
I think we can morally do nothing else. I think we have an absolute responsibility to do so, regardless of who's predicting what outcome. I think that we have a unique opportunity almost upon us in the 1st of May. This is the original Labor Day. This is 122 years since the Haymarket Massacre, since the fight that got us the 8-hour day. This is 5 years since Mission Accomplished Day, since waddling across the flight deck in San Diego Harbor. This is 3 years since the day the Downing Street memo came out. This is 2 years since Nancy Pelosi obeyed the Republican National Committee and took impeachment off the table. This is the day of the immigrants' rights movement. And this is the day that groups have finally said, nobody go to work this day. Everybody go on strike at least for a day and get active and do something. So we're saying everybody, high noon, or if it has to be some other time for your group, make it another time, but on May 1st, go to your nearest congressmember's office and demand impeachment. And put out a press release to the media that says we're doing this as part of a national movement happening in such and such a number of districts, which we will have at democrats.com/Mayday. Newspapers love national local stories, where it's a national thing happening locally. You know, but not just that day.
Okay.
Keep doing it. And you know, when I did this radio show this afternoon, the morons who call in to have a friendly conversation with me, call their shows if they have any. Call as much as they do, even to our friendly shows. Write letters to the editor, nonstop. Do something every day. And you know, marching in the streets is great, but it takes a lot of people, and it can be ignored in this country with our media. Take a handful of people and go and sit in and refuse to leave and be carried out. Be carried out on camera from your congressmember's office and explain that you are non-violently trying to end the violence and trying to restore the rule of law. You know, these are not difficult things. These are very easy things compared to how we got the 8-hour day, for example. And there's no excuse not to do it, even if we're guaranteed to lose for our lifetime. We have to do it because of how women got the right to vote.